Speaksies.
Welcome to Origin of Speaksies, episode 145. I'm Steve here with my good friend Scott. Before we get going, please like and subscribe to Origin of Speaksies on YouTube and Rumble. Follow us at your favorite podcast provider like Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. And give us your money. Go to speaksies.com/store for all sorts of artwork and t-shirts, especially about our theme tonight, which, Scott, is one that's kind of surprising. It's taking so long for me to get to, especially.
Yeah.
The origin of kale.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the reason it took so long is because this was ostensibly a show about words and phrases, but over the years it's transformed. It has become about hating kale in part. And I think it's only right that you get a dedicated night to really just make your case, lay it out for anyone that might still like kale, why it's from the actual devil.
Right.
And so for you, I am excited. So,
well, I still think this keeps with the theme of the show. We talk about words and phrases we use every day, maybe words and phrases we speak, like speaksies. It's taken us 145 episodes to put our terrible pun to really just make it clear that's why we use it. But I'm fine with that because you know why? We're going to talk about kale.
Hey, I did a segment on the McRib. So I'm not casting aspersions. I have a segment today that has nothing to do with words or phrases either. So that was not a shot, to be clear. But
it's fine.
We started off with idioms, and then at a certain point, it's like, okay, let's throw some other stuff in there, keep it interesting. Kale, it's time to talk about kale. So
yeah,
I'm going to kick back and let you go.
There's a lot of negative energy out here right now, and that's okay because we're talking about kale. I blame the devil's weed on that. So to be clear before I get started, I actually really do hate kale. I'm facetious about a lot of stuff, but it angers me. Part of the reason is I'm a small, proportionately tiny person who is awkward and angry all the time. So I try to put my anger on things that aren't people.
Right.
Not successful all the time at that, but I try to. So kale is a pretty convenient target. And I think it's one of those things I did spend some time thinking about this, like why I really do hate kale. And I think it kind of goes in that, I expect when people go far right or far left, they pretty much end up the same thing. Yeah. I think there's certain philosophies in life that end up the same way, that you end up kind of superstitious and not very logical. And there's all this like magical stuff that happens. And I think with that, there's a certain wisdom. There's a certain, I don't know, wisdom is probably not the right word for it, but like way of thinking that here's this brand new thing that's been in front of us the whole time that no one else has figured out, but I've figured it out. And kale kind of fits in that category of stuff, of something that's been around for over 2,000 years, as we'll talk about, but a superfood that's just been lying around. So this has been something that's been kind of a slow burn for me for a while, but I needed a spark to start a great flame to burn down the world of kale. And I received it oddly through a TikTok video that I received from a coworker. So Scott, if you could share that video.
All right, I'll do that right now.
Kale is a trash leaf. And I know that Dr. Oz tells you that it's super healthy for you, it's got micronutrients and it's a superfood and all this, but he's a doctor in the same way that Hawaiian Punch is Hawaiian. Also, if you eat too much kale, you can get thyroid issues. Did you know that? But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. Before 10 years ago, when it became this fad, you know who the largest purchaser of kale was? It was Pizza Hut. And no, there wasn't some mysterious kale pizza that we all missed in the 90s. They used it for decoration in their salad bar. It's a trash leaf.
Kale is a trash leaf is true, but not as catchy, I think, as kale is from the devil. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the origin and history of kale. I'm going to talk about how it became a sensation through the hard work of one person who I oddly admire, which will sound very strange. And spoiler alert, it is not John Cougar Mellencamp, to be clear, because I was wondering. I oddly admire.
Yeah, I knew. So you haven't told me anything about this at all, but you said there you sort of alluded to some stuff like that, and I thought it could be Mellencamp for a minute, and then I thought, nah, he wouldn't phrase it that way if it was Mellencamp.
Also, I'm going to talk about kale's actual nutritional value and how it gets in your body, if it even does. And maybe most importantly, is kale from the devil? Spoiler, yes. And I'm going to give you facts on that. So to be clear, I am about as unobjective an observer on this as possible. I have tried my best to go to facts to back up everything I'm saying, and I'll have all the links available if anyone wants to question me. I've stayed away. There's a lot of crazy stuff you can find about kale, pro and con. So a lot of the things that were addressed in that video, I actually will address factually. I'm not going to go to some of the outlandish things I've seen things about it causing cancer and things worse than that.
Mhm.
Everything I will share will be backed up by doctors. Unfortunately, I can't debunk the Hawaiian Punch Dr. Oz thing, but maybe that's a future episode of Origin of Eatcies. But
Could be. So, before we go further, if
Mhm.
if you're going to get to this, tell me you're
Yeah.
going to get to it. Was there an event that happened that made did something happen involving kale that turned you this way, or was there a specific person, or what's the origin of or do you even know? It was just annoyed you. It was everywhere.
I think it annoyed me and it was everywhere. And I think,
Mhm.
honestly, I really do hate kale. Something
Yeah.
probably happened that made me so angry. I don't remember. I
Yeah.
remember the first time it coming up socially was an event
Uh-huh.
you were at with me.
Mhm.
We were at our friend Mustache's, one of his birthday
Yeah.
parties several
Mhm.
years ago. And someone had kale chips there
Mhm.
at the party. And we're at a party drinking beer for somebody's birthday. And I
Mhm.
found myself jawing with somebody about kale, like unintentionally,
Oh,
like the way
wow.
that you would discuss politics or religion or sex with someone
Yeah.
heatedly, and you shouldn't do that at a party. I was doing that about
Mhm.
kale leaves.
Yeah,
That's the first time really it manifested itself in public.
I didn't know. So it had been so I've known you for a very long time. Um, I I I never quite know if you're joking or not.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe a year or two ago I realized I'm like, he's actually angry at Kale. Like this isn't a character he's doing. This isn't a joke. And so because I would kind of tease you with it and think it was funny because like I personally I do like kale. It's fine. I don't think it's a superfood or anything, but I eat it
Mhm.
but I would kind of rub it in your face a little bit to be funny sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I realized he's actually angry. Like if I bring this up, it might mess up his whole mood. So I've learned to sort of tread lightly, just accept it because I love you. It's an issue that you're passionate about. It's a
Mhm.
cause that you're passionate about. So you know that's great, and I think you're going to give us, hey, you
Yeah.
might, who knows, you might convert me and millions of others,
Yeah.
or at least dozens of others, with
Somewhere
this
in
episode.
between millions or dozens. There's got to be a happy medium in between that.
Right.
I'm gonna try to hit everyone with facts, and again, I'm gonna stay away from some outlandish claims about it, other than it being from the devil, which I should be able to prove here also.
Yeah.
But let's get started. So,
Good.
the origin and history of kale, starting with Edom Online, kale, also kale spelled Kail, cabbage, any kind of greens with curled or wrinkled leaves, circa 1300, a variant of coffle, then they reference coal, like a coleslaw,
Mhm.
surviving in Scottish and Northern English.
Okay.
So it is, there's a reason Scotland and Northern England are listed. In Scotland, we're going to come back to Scotland several times during our journey here. So we know where the name comes from. It's been around since 1300. And let's learn a little bit more about it from Wikipedia. Uh, they're going to talk about the plant species that kale comes from,
Okay.
Brassica oleracea, a plant species that includes many common cultivars such as cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, Savoy cabbage, and a couple other things that I can't pronounce.
Okay. So now, what's your take on? I know you're not huge. I'm not. I've said before you don't like vegetables, and you've said no, that's not true. I
That's
think
not
you're
true.
against salads, though, or you're against.
I'm against salads on
Right.
principle, but I like vegetables.
Yeah.
I like broccoli. I tolerate broccoli. I tolerate cauliflower. Tolerate
Hmm.
spinach.
Got it.
For the reasons you got to eat them. You got to get those vitamins out. But
Okay.
again, my big thing is not vegetables in general. It's more of like getting the nutrients you need, and something again
Hmm.
being called a superfood, even though it was
Right.
potentially sitting in
Hmm.
front of you at Pizza Hut for all these
Right.
years.
Right.
So continuing on the plant species of kale,
Mhm.
in its uncultivated form, it's called wild cabbage, and it's native to coastal and southern and western Europe. A hardy plant in its uncultivated form, its high tolerance for salt and lime and its intolerance of competition from other plants typically restrict its natural occurrence to limestone sea cliffs like those on both sides of the English Channel.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Grows on
extreme-
sea cliffs?
It's tough. It stays around. It's been around for a long time and
Mm.
survives in some very tough environments.
So from your perspective, kind of like a weed or something, right?
Well, it's a wild cabbage. I mean, I
Okay.
would call it a weed. Again, I'm very biased, but it is what it
Mhm.
is, and it is used.
Yeah.
We're going to hear about some of its uses coming up to the year 2011, where someone changed the world as we know it about
I can't
kale.
wait. I'm really excited.
So, getting to that, going to an article by Lauren Alex O'Hagan called
Mhm.
"Celebrity Greens: Kale and Seaweed Were Long Considered Food of Last Resort." This article is on theconversation.com, and I'm going to quote heavily from this. 10 years ago, you've been hard pressed to find kale in your local supermarket, but now kale is ubiquitous from shops and social media to menus and foodie blogs. It's acquired a celebrity following from such stars as Gwyneth Paltrow, Michelle Obama, and Beyonce. And this next sentence is one of the key sentences here.
Mhm. It's already kind of going bad, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I'm pretty happy with everyone there except Gwyneth and Beyonce. But let me keep going.
You're a big Oprah guy. My bad. Go ahead.
The fame of this vegetable is largely attributed to an expensive media campaign in 2011 by the American Kale Association, which
Mm.
hired an entrepreneur to promote the product and remarket it as a superfood. So there are facts in that sentence, but
Mhm.
not in the order that they were read, and you'll understand here shortly.
Okay.
So going back to the conversation, kale was once the food of the rural poor. Kale has been grown in Europe for over 2,000 years and used to be so common it was deemed only suitable for livestock. Considered to be hardy, but more curious and useful, humans only ate kale as a last resort during times of famine or extreme poverty. For this reason, it acquired the nicknames of poor man's spinach or peasant cabbage.
That's good. Peasant cabbage is good.
Yeah, it's nothing like being called the poor man's spinach, too.
Yeah.
That's got to be fun if
Mhm.
a weed was sent in it, or a cabbage, pardon me.
It is funny
That
how
was my
it is.
facts.
Yeah, it is funny how things go in and out of vogue. Like the poor man's or excuse me, the poor man's spinach, and then it becomes a favorite of Gwyneth Paltrow, and
Yeah.
it becomes all trendy. It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
the vagina steamers there.
Yeah.
Continuing from this article, kale became such a powerful symbol of Scottish peasantry that the word became used in Scotland to describe food in general, just as bread is sometimes employed. And
Really?
concluding,
Like, can I get some kale? Just meant food, like Coke means.
well, of the peasantry. So again, the
Mhm.
poor man's spinach or peasant cabbage. Times are tough. You're not running up your MasterCard at Publix in Scotland in the
Right.
year 1300.
You're gonna go hang off a cliff and pull some kale.
Yeah, you're going to eat what your
Mhm.
cattle ate, which was kale.
Mm.
In conclusion, as kale was considered to be the last choice winter green if no other crop was available, it became one of the chief vegetables grown across Britain during World War II's Dig for Victory campaign. After the war, the vegetable disappeared again from dining room tables, only to reemerge in 2011.
Man, what a story of the hero's journey. Starts as a low peasant food,
Yeah.
then becomes what it is today.
Yeah. So
Delicious.
if you do any research on
Mm-hmm.
kale prior to 2011, you're going to see a lot of it being used you're going to see Scotland come up a lot, and a lot of it being used for grazing for sheep or for cattle, for livestock of some.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not our last time in Scotland.
Oh,
Yeah.
ooh, okay. Now I'm starting to. The wheels are turning.
So, how did kale come from being the poor man's cabbage to being,
Mhm.
I would say, a high-end market item cherished by white women? Well, you're about to
And
find out.
on the Chick-fil-A menu.
All right. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I'm
I
not
think you are
poking
trying to
at you.
provoke. It's okay.
No,
Listen,
no.
I am in a high mood right now. So
I actually am not trying to provoke you. I
intense.
just trying to help you with your point that it went from
Yeah.
peasant food to
to the
Chick-fil-A,
Lord's
which
chicken.
which I know is a touchy subject for you, and I probably
Mhm.
shouldn't have brought it up. So
It's
let's
okay.
go
Listen,
on.
you have the influence of the devil on you, and I'm going to fight it with truth right now. So, go into an article how kale went from Pizza Hut garnish to PR miracle, from mash.com by Hope No. But most of us probably wouldn't have given kale a second look before 2012, the vegetables before times, when NPR says it was best known as the green and leafy backdrop of Pizza Hut's salad bar.
Mm,
So going back to the comment from the TikTok video, it is actually true what
that's
he
funny.
said. I
Yeah.
researched it. NPR noted this in 2015, and it came back around recently. Something pushed it up again. It might have even been that TikTok video, but something brought it back up.
Yeah.
But now we're going to get close to the truth of how it went from a garnish to actually being such a big deal that we're talking about today.
Mhm.
New York public relations firm My Young Auntie positions itself as the agency of choice for the innovative introduction of brands and products, having represented stellar clients including Hermes, Converse, and Vivienne Westwood.
Mhm.
The firm's CEO, Oberon St. Clair, added kale to the list after deciding she wanted to teach people more about the leafy green. How did she do it? In an email to a magazine called Mind Body Green, Sinclair referred to her guerrilla marketing approach to amplifying kale as relatively simple.
Yeah.
I literally put it on chalkboards around Manhattan and on the menus of cool restaurants. And the trend escalated from there, Sinclair wrote.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's how it started.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we see a woman by the name of Oberon St. Clair, whose name is very
Mhm.
difficult for me to pronounce, but it's okay. I'm going to
It's a
power
tough one.
through. It
Mhm.
is. And this is just a hint of where, and I had never heard of her before or her work with kale. So we saw a reference there to an article from Mind Body Green. And I
Yes.
tracked down the article from 2017 entitled The Strange Mystery of Who Made Kale Famous and Why. So I'm going to refer pretty heavily to this article, which starts with the author, exploring the question we are here: who made kale something famous? She discussed before how in the past sometimes products would come to market based on a PR firm trying to move product, and talked about how orange juice was actually created in 1907 by the ad agency Lord and Thomas on part of the California Fruit Growers Exchange to help them
Oh.
deal with surplus oranges.
Oh.
And also recently, pomegranates had a similar comeback thanks to Palm Wonderful.
That's yeah. Pomegranate did become one of those things that was everywhere for a while. And it seems like things like this, they're like everywhere, trendy, and then they kind of scale back, but they're still around. Like
Yeah.
I never heard of a pomegranate, and then it was like get pomegranate Gatorade or pomegranates
Right.
everywhere. It's kind of scaled back, but it's still there. And that's interesting about orange juice. They're like, hey, we got all these oranges.
Yeah.
Let's
And
juice them and market it. And I grew up thinking orange juice was like, you need to have a glass of orange juice every day because it's
Yeah.
healthy. And then now you realize it's not. I mean, oranges, I guess, are healthy, but
it's not
there's a lot
the
of
worst
sugar in
thing.
a
You get a
glass of
lot of
oranges.
vitamin C, but you also get a
Mhm.
lot of sugar in it.
Right.
So the author here's logically thinking, well, there
Mhm.
were big associations behind the promotions of this.
Mhm.
So in doing her research, and when she met Ms. St. Clair, Ms. St. Clair reported initially that she was hired by an organization called the American Kale Association. So as St. Clair became famous for
Mhm.
her promotion of kale, our author explored trying to find out who was promoting kale, especially in light of the fact that the more that kale was sold, the more it was actually hurting farmers who used it previously. As the price went up and demand for it went up, farmers who normally used it were actually running out of product.
Because they couldn't feed their animals.
They couldn't. That's correct. Demand was rising, but supply was outpacing it. So as she explored, she kept hearing about the American Kale Association,
Mhm.
and she spoke to many other people in the actually kale industry, people that represented kale farmers, and couldn't find out anything about this. They weren't members of this association to promote kale. So she went back to her original source, Oberon St. Clair, and after much prodding, basically found out that Ms. St. Clair invented the American Kale Association to help promote kale.
Wow. Okay, so there was no American Kale Association. There was
Right.
just Oberon St. Clair.
Well, there is one that she invented and
Right,
admits
okay.
this in multiple places. This isn't like a conspiracy. This was
So-
something that she didn't hide, but also didn't promote.
What exactly is her angle? I mean, is she and did she invest in kale, or she just wanted to like what prompted her to do this? Somebody paid her, I guess, right? But see, I thought it was the American Kale Association, but she invented it. So did she just want to see what, like, can I get people to eat kale? Like,
I think that's really what it is. And from what I've researched on it, again, I am very biased and want to apply malicious intent to everybody.
Yeah.
I think that she's just a really great marketer. She liked kale for its advertised benefits and really wanted to promote it. I think it was almost like she wanted to see if she could do it, if she was able to pull that off.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
She was asked a couple years ago in an article entitled "Female Disruptors: You Need to Shake Up Your Industry." She was interviewed by Candace Georgianis, whose name I just pretty much butchered. And the quote from Ms. St. Clair: "One of my biggest campaigns I am incredibly proud of was promoting the vegetable kale. I launched a guerrilla marketing campaign that was a global domino effect into the biggest vegetable trend in the last century. I created the American Kale Association and wrote kale on chalkboards around New York and menus of cool restaurants. The marketing idea helped kale reach its superfood status."
I'm glad that this is a woman, because I know you wouldn't punch a woman, but if this was a guy, I could see you picking a fight, like actually attacking this person.
9 out of 10 times, yes. But I think what I actually kind of like about it is the fact that she didn't like buy up a lot of, kale stock and then promote it.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
I think she does actually, she's wrong. It's also not vegetable, but I think that she did this almost just to show her power of how good she is. You did a great job. So I honestly, like, in a weird way, I kind of admire her.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. Well, good. No violence then.
Yeah. So no violence. So far we've discussed kale's origins as a cabbage in Scotland, used mainly for feeding cattle and other livestock and very poor Scottish people when things are going bad. Was truly used by Pizza Hut. They were the biggest purchaser, as it was the garnish that surrounded their salad bar. And let's all take a moment to pour out our 40s for the Pizza Hut salad bar, which out of all the salad bars was probably the grossest salad bar.
Yeah.
But at least they tried for a while. They put a little bit of effort into that.
Yeah. Yeah. The worst and best was, I mean, Pizza Hut with their salad bar, but the Wendy's salad bar was really gross, but also as a kid, I loved it. You know what I mean? But thinking back, the stuff they had on there, it was like, really, it's weird to even call it a salad bar, because you could, like, if I remember correctly, you could like make a taco or make nacho. There was like all this weird stuff you could do. Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't have kale adorning the, as well. I think I remember going to Ponderosa. I think they might have done the same thing, because I remember Ponderosa back when I lived in Ohio. That was like the big place to go. And they had, I remember the salad bar, like in the picture with the Pizza Hut thing, I remember there being green stuff in there.
Yeah.
And at the time, I would have been like, nobody eats that. So, wow.
Well, it probably was, because before 2011, it was a cabbage that could endure, really bad weather and situations. What better thing to put on your salad bar, something that's going to stay for a while. It's going to take a few days, and was basically, used to supplement the feeding of cattle. It's never been like the primary feeding for cattle.
You wouldn't give it to cattle as the primary, right?
Yeah, it goes in there as a little part of it. So
wow.
So now that after this, I want to talk a little more about kale's actual true nutritional value. But first, Scott, I believe you have a segment for us.
I do. So that was, first of all, wow, this is a lot. This is already a lot. So you're really coming hard with the facts, and I'm very impressed so far. This is really interesting. It's not just, I didn't know if we were just going to get you railing on kale for 10 minutes and then just flaming out and like your head exploding, but you did your homework.
There's always a chance I'm going to flame out. Yeah. So don't count me out yet.
All right. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to cleanse the palate of kale for a minute. There will be no kale talk for the next 15 minutes or so. And we are going to do the new segment we've done the last couple times, and that is Origin of Eatcies. So let's do it.
Bacon?
No, I want my bacon. I gotta tell you something. Bacon is good for me.
All right, so today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to keep
All
it
right.
in the food category. So Origin of Eatcies, it's going to have a little history. It's kind of related to food.
Okay.
And my favorite things to do, Steve, in my segments is to quiz you because it's fun and you do a job and we can learn along the way. So this time what we're going to do is a game called Food Mascots, Real or Fake.
Oh, all right.
Through, and the way this is going to work is just what it sounds like. These are mascots of food. You'll know who all these people are or things or whatever are, and some of them are actually based upon real people or real people, and then some of them are made up creations, and you're going to have to tell us which is which. So
I like it.
Let's do it and just talk us through your thought process.
Sure.
So with maybe a softball, maybe not, but we're going to start with Aunt Jemima.
Aunt Jemima. So I don't know if this is a product that actually does it still exist?
No, I don't believe it does. And by the way, this is, I think, well, I won't spoil. I was going to say something. I won't spoil the next one, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is. But you look at that bottle, if you're watching on YouTube, you're following along, you'll see that just reminds me of childhood. It makes me want some pancakes. But was there an Aunt Jemima or not?
So let's see. So looking at that bottle, again, I don't think it's around anymore. And I know that's definitely not the original bottle. Aunt Jemima's had a couple updates throughout the years. I'm going to think about this. Now, for some reason, I always conflate her and Mrs. Butterworth.
Right.
I'm pretty sure isn't real. And if I'm wrong on that, that would be crazy if there actually is a sentient bottle of sugary delights. I'm going to go with my gut on this and say Aunt Jemima is a real person.
Okay. You talked it out really well. Aunt Jemima is unfortunately fake. She was basically just put on the box as a stereotypical African-American character in a postbellum minstrel show. So there was a woman named Nancy Green that was hired, actually a former slave, to sort of play her and be her in advertisements. But the Aunt Jemima was created out of whole cloth, whereas Mrs. Butterworth, which doesn't come up later, actually was based on a real person. So it was 50-50. So you were right. You were right with everything you said. It just wasn't Aunt Jemima. So, okay.
And just to clarify also, we use log cabin at our house. Just in case
log cabin.
They come after me.
Okay. Yeah. That's right. I've never owned Aunt Jemima either. I was just kidding. All right, here we go. How about Wendy from Wendy's? Is Wendy a real person? Was Wendy a real person or no?
So let's see. So looking at the cartoon of her, definitely doesn't look like a real person. Just kind of got more of a Pippi Longstocking look to her. Which, by the way, have you ever read Pippi Longstocking?
I don't remember. I saw the shows as growing up. I don't know if I ever read it.
We had it for my daughter when she was younger as an Audible book. Fantastic book series, actually. Like like sometimes you have stuff for your kids.
Yeah.
And you spend most of your time listening to it wanting to beat somebody senseless. Pippi Longstocking doesn't fit into that category.
Okay.
So as we've talked about in the past, I was somebody that I felt like I was a Wendy's connoisseur back in the day. It was somewhere I went frequently. It was fast food or quick serve food, but a little classier than not. And I know the owner, Dave Thomas, was often promoted adoption. It was real big on that. Try to do that. And from my knowledge of that, I'm fairly certain that Wendy is actually based on one of his daughters.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Wendy is a real person.
Your answer is Wendy from Wendy's is a real person. Wendy is real.
Yes. You're
right. Dave Thomas, who by all accounts was a great guy. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see his daughter. That is his daughter, and she's wearing the blue and white vertical striped sort of shirt and the pigtails. And he did base the Wendy logo on his daughter Wendy, which is really cute, actually.
Yeah.
Her real name is Melinda Lou.
Mhm.
Okay, but her siblings, when they were younger, couldn't pronounce it, so they called her Wenda. That was just their nickname, and that turned into Wendy. And then we had Wendy from Wendy's, and then came the salad/taco bar.
Yeah.
And everybody got fatter. All right. What about the Quaker Oats guy? Real or fake?
Quaker Oats guy. So looking at this guy, in the same way I could see Aunt Jemima was kind of a stereotype. This
Mhm.
guy kind of looks like some sort of Quaker stereotype too. Just the way he's put together. I don't know if he was ever in a minstrel show. Did you ever come across, were there anything as like a Quaker minstrel show? Did that happen?
I didn't run across that. Didn't run across it. No.
I don't know. Maybe there's a good song and dance about being pacifists and eating oatmeal.
Yeah.
But I'll do some research. Maybe, we continue to do Origin of Eatcies. Maybe that'll come up
Yeah,
again. So
maybe.
just looking at that guy, I'm going to say that he is not real.
Okay. You're on fire. Quaker Oats guy, not a real guy. So this one's kind of interesting because at some point people thought he was William Penn. And
Mhm.
actually, I believe it was in the early advertisements. It actually referred to him, this guy, as William Penn. But he is not. He's not an actual person. His image, as the Quaker website says now, is that of a man dressed in Quaker garb, chosen because the Quaker faith projected the values of honesty, integrity, purity, and strength. So, yeah, I mean, there is something about, you look at Quaker Oats guy and you
Mhm.
want to make him proud, and you feel like whatever he's giving you for breakfast is going to be good. And
Yeah.
now that I think of it, that's how a lot of these breakfast foods are sort of advertised that way, of like Aunt Jemima just happy smiling at you.
Yeah.
Quaker Oats guy. There are more that I can't think of, but
Yeah.
just you they make you feel like, hey buddy, you need some oats.
And I was going to make a smart comment about what would happen if Aunt Jemima and the Quaker Oats guy got together. But the Quaker Oats guy, Quakers were abolitionists very early on.
Oh, that's right.
So
Yeah. Who knows? It may have been like a Romeo and Juliet situation, and they broke all barriers and became.
there's a minstrel show in there somewhere.
There is.
Yeah.
The Aunt Jemima and Quaker Oats guy. That's a musical there, I think.
There's a weird fan fiction somewhere.
It's
on the
very.
internet. Yep.
I bet we could find it. All right, here we go. So you're on fire. So you've got your 2 out of 3 so far. The next one up, Otis Spunkmeyer. Real or fake? Is there an Otis Spunkmeyer?
Now I've had the cookies before, despite the awkward name. It is at least memorable. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah. And there's no picture. There's no picture of a person here. So this is a little twist.
You don't want to eat. You might like the name, but you don't want to see what an Otis Spunkmeyer looks like,
right?
Or what he's doing with that batter. So I like those cookies. I like the square chips that they have in them. I'm going to go, the name is so awful that it has to be real. So I'm going to go that Otis Spunkmeyer is a real person.
Otis Spunkmeyer, which is, awesome to say. And very good theory, but not a real guy. So where did that weird name come from? This guy named Ken Rawlings had a specialty shop, sold cookie dough, muffins, brownies. He let his 12-year-old daughter name it, and she came up with Otis Spunkmeyer. So there's a kind of a daughter theme going on here.
There
you got
is.
Dave Thomas's daughter. And so that was a fun name she came up with, and now you have it. So not a real dude.
And I could see Dad also, once he heard that name, thinking, do I put my cookie out, or do I explain why Spunkmeyer might not be a good name? And he took the right route. He put the cookies out. So I'm glad he's been blessed with success with that.
When your kids are young, they say things that you are like, I'm the bad person for thinking that this is dirty.
Yeah.
And so you have no choice but just to roll with it. Actually reminds me of a funny story that I'm going to tell real quick, if you don't mind.
Please.
So when my son was, I don't know. So he's almost 15. He was probably like 11 or 12. And he goes through phases. He likes me to cook different things for him. And he was in a real kick of, he wanted noodles all the time. He wanted me to make pasta and just like season it up the way he liked it, give him a little sauce or whatever it was. And so I remember one time there wasn't this one time, he started doing it which he doesn't do anymore, which
Mm.
I think he's old enough now to not. We go, hey, Dad, can I get some nudes?
Mm.
Short noodles to nudes. And I'm like, so I have my son asking me for nudes 2 or 3 times a week. And of course, I'm the weirdo for thinking that there's anything weird
Yeah.
about it, but same sort of deal. You just go, sure thing, bud. And you don't say it back though. That's the
Right.
thing. I bet Ken Rawlings never said the actual name. He just nodded and said, the guy. Okay. The guy. All right. What about Little Debbie?
Little Debbie. So I think I've been incredibly positive this whole series, even though I'm talking about kale, which is something I legitimately hate and get angry about.
Yeah.
So I got to be a little bit of myself, a little negative. I've never really liked anything from Little Debbie. I'll eat it in a crunch, but like compared to Hostess, it's third rate. It's just not good. They're kind of mass produced. They have that just kind of built to last sort of thing that, definitely Hostess has. I have a feeling if we ever get nuked, the Twinkies and the Ho-Hos are still going to be here. Maybe the Little Debbies, but they're still going to probably taste terrible. So I've had some of this stuff. I'll eat it, but it's, I don't know, pretty bland and generic.
Chock full of parabens, maybe? Could be, right?
Well, maybe that would bring me in. Little Debbie with more parabens might bring me back to them. I'm kind of on the fence with this. I'm just going to go for no.
Okay. Little Debbie was real. And look at how cute she is. She looks just like Little Debbie. So another, not daughter, but granddaughter this time. So gentleman by the name of O.D. McKee, founder of McKee Foods, had this picture, this adorable photograph of his 4-year-old daughter. And she was wearing a straw hat. And he was inspired to name his company Snacks. So now you feel bad, right? About talking
I
shit.
do a little bit. That's an adorable picture,
Yeah.
but you know what? Your brownies are still trash.
No, they are bad. So like I will say I wouldn't eat anything Little Debbie now. I definitely grew up eating oatmeal cream pies, but they aren't as good anymore. Like many things, or again, we were talking about this, I think, or like last time, or maybe it was off mic, but how I just don't know. Oh yeah, it was off mic because we were talking about the Taco Bell pizza or whatever.
Right.
I don't know if things are getting worse or just that I'm older and things that I used to like don't taste good anymore. And I'm sure it's a combination of both, but I used to think oatmeal cream pie, I mean, it's just a rush of sugar.
Yeah.
I thought they were delicious. And I remember like having one of those times you're at the store, you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get some OCPs, get them. And you're like, this is hot garbo. It's not good. So, all right. Okay. Well, we've taken a little hit here. We've got a couple more. Let's see if you can pull it out with the last 2 or 3 here. What about the Sun-Made Raisin Girl? Kind of cute, right?
She is, I guess, but she's still with raisins that are kind of like food I'd eat in a pinch.
Oh,
I don't know. Raisins are all right. They still make them in the little tiny
Nature's
ridiculous
candy.
boxes.
They definitely still make those because I don't buy them because I don't eat raisins either. But raisins is another one that was foisted upon us, right? Growing up, my lunchbox, these would find their way into my lunchbox. Those little boxes you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they were like the last thing I'd eat. I'd eat them, but
not willingly. I think the biggest thing I have against raisins is when I see them in cookies. Because whenever I see an oatmeal raisin cookie, I mean, I've had some delicious ones too, but I just look at it and go, you should have been chocolate chips. There's no reason why you should be here. Chocolate chips should be here, but maybe it's like the peasant's cabbage sort of situation. You do what you got to do,
right?
And get those out. So I'm gonna go. She's just too generic. I'm gonna say she's not real.
The Sun-Made Raisin Girl is real or was real. She's passed now, but Lorraine Collett Peterson is the real life Sun-Made Girl. So this is actually kind of an interesting story. Peterson and some friends were on went to the Panama Pacific International Exposition in San Francisco. She worked for Sun-Made and was handing out samples, and all of the girls were wearing blue bonnets except for her. She was wearing a red bonnet, and the wife of a company executive noticed her, thought it was great, thought she was cute, and the rest is history. They used her as a model for the artwork. I guess much like Little Debbie was used as a model, they used to do this. So she was a real person. Now I do realize that it's sort of tough when you say real or not, because going back to Aunt
Right.
Jemima, there was a real person, so this is really kind of close to that. But the reason I
Mhm.
said this one was real is because she actually inspired
Right.
this. This is a picture of her that inspired for this and for the product. Whereas the Aunt Jemima thing was kind of a tacked on deal, and they already had the whole
Right.
concept. So you could kind of, I think on those two, I could maybe give you 50%. But anyway, she
Yeah.
really was a real girl.
Very good.
All right, let's go. I think I got two more here. So Famous Amos. So we did Otis Spunkmeyer. What about Famous Amos?
I don't know. I'm losing confidence in myself as we've been going on.
You got
here.
this.
I
You
feel
got
like I was hot, but then I'm cooling off. But it's okay.
By the way, nobody should know this stuff. So this is just for fun.
That's good. And I still have some kale facts to drop.
That's right.
Famous
excited.
Amos. Again, I actually think these are decent cookies. They're not as good as Otis Spunkmeyer. Otis Spunkmeyer, I think you always get them like the one, like a pack of like one or two.
Oh, they used to sell them at Subway. I just remember that. They would be, that was the cookie that Subway would sell, was this Otis Spunkmeyer. That's why I think I even knew who they were.
When was the last time you ate at a Subway? It's
been at least 8 years, something like that. I switched over to Jersey Mike's and I haven't ever gone back.
I don't think I've eaten at a Subway since I've had my daughter. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Like her entire lifetime. I don't know what that says about me or Subway, but
it's Subway. It's
Subway.
Yeah, there's better options. That's the problem. If there were no other sub places, I might get a hankering for a sub and not want to make one. I might go there, but once you start having better stuff, you're like, it's kind of nasty. Like the whole situation just seems gross, and I'm confused. And there's been enough urban legends or not about weird things in the tunas. So
yeah.
But Famous Amos, yes, they're like
Amos.
the little hard cookies. They're good. Again, they're good for what they are.
They get the job done in a pinch. I'm gonna say not real, just based. It rhymes too easily.
Dang it, man! I wanted you to get this one. Famous Amos is real, and I knew this one. And this is another interesting. This is probably the only one out of all these, maybe the Wendy's ones that I would have known. So anyway, guy named Wally Amos opened up a cookie store in LA in 75. He had some pretty influential and rich friends, Marvin Gaye and Helen Reddy. They backed him up and he began his franchise and got distributed. But the reason I know about Famous Amos is he was on Shark Tank a couple of years ago trying to pitch a different product, because it's actually a very sad story. He sold his rights, 100%, all of it, with his likeness and everything, to whatever, I don't even know who owns Famous Amos now, Nestle or something, for a pittance. I didn't look it up, but he said it on the thing, and everybody there was like, oh my gosh, it was like $5,000 or something. It was so bad. And the poor guy, every store, every airport you're at, there's Famous Amos cookies or whatever, and he probably just sheds a tear. So he's still alive. I looked, and so Famous Amos is still out there, and I'm hoping he's brought a lot of happiness to.
It's a happy looking guy, especially with that hat. It'd be odd if he was not smiling wearing that hat, but I hope he makes some money. I like that guy. Good job, Famous Amos.
Okay, here we go. I believe this is my last one, and it's Chef Boyardee.
So I feel kind of torn on this one too. I feel like I could go either way.
What's your history with Chef Boyardee, if I might?
Chef,
did you grow up with it, or were you guys like?
I grew up with the advertising in the same way that Oberon St. Clair did a great job of advertising kale. I feel like Chef Boyardee did a really good job of advertising to kids.
Yes.
All sorts of things. I think beefaroni, which I'm pretty sure isn't an ancient Italian, pasta, and like things with noodles. And occasionally I would badger my parents to get them, and then would be immediately disappointed because they were gross. And if something I ate as a 10-year-old was gross, it had to be pretty bad. It had to be pretty nasty. Right. I also too remember trying to make like a pizza at home with a Chef Boyardee kit, which frankly probably reflects worse on my family's baking abilities than Chef Boyardee. But I'm pretty certain now that I've said it out loud, and I'm feeling like a sympathetic rush of sodium to my body from eating that. I think he actually was a real guy. I think he was in some of the commercials. So I'm going to go that Chef Boyardee is real.
You pulled it out on the last one. Great job, Chef Boyardee, real guy. And man, I was listening to a podcast, and Adam Ray was on it and talking to Adam Carolla, and they were just laughing about the Chef Boyardee food that we grew up with. And a lot of, you think about this stuff came along when the whole latchkey kid thing was kind of going on, and it was a way that kids, and the microwave was invented. So it was a way for one of the first things where kids could just feed themselves and dump it in a bowl like dog food and put it in a microwave. So it was very convenient. And, I will say I crushed a lot of beefaroni growing up. I refused to eat the ravioli. I thought because the ravioli, there's something even grosser about the meat inside. Like, if I wouldn't eat it, because I would eat anything. I ate potted meat. I eat potted meat. It tastes delicious. I don't care.
What is potted meat? Because I don't think I've ever had it.
It's like tripe, hearts. It's all the stuff that's left over that's edible. Kind of like when we were talking about the McRib thing. It's the leftover stuff, and it says on the back. What I remember, because as a kid, I just remember putting it on a cracker and eating it, and looking at it and going heart. And try, all these things in a weird things, and going, whatever. I'm gonna eat it. I don't care. I also used to eat sardines. I love sardines. I freaking love sardines, but they stink. I would eat them at school. I was really bad for them. So anyway, Chef Boyardee was born Ettore Boyardee, Boiardi. He was born in Piacenza, Italy, in 1897. He changed his name when he came to the U.S. He made it Boyardee. Actually, you know what? He didn't change his name, but that's what he uses for marketing. He actually became the head chef at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. He was actually a really good chef. He started a restaurant that was incredibly successful. And then, just was one of these enterprising guys in America, that immigrants that said, you know what I could do? I could sacrifice quality by 95%, put it in a can and sell it. The American dream.
Listen, we don't know also what it was like to be served beefaroni at the Plaza Hotel in the late 20s. Maybe there's something here that got lost in the canning process that we've missed out on.
You're right. We could be. So it may have been a delicacy. So great job, Steve. You nailed it at the end, and that's all that matters. So I declare you a winner.
Thank you.
And that was this week's Origin of Eatcies.
Bacon.
No, I want my bacon. I gotta tell you something. Bacon is good for me.
From one extreme to another, Otis Spunkmeyer to the devil's weed, kale. So far we've talked about its history up to 2011, primarily used as poor man's cabbage or feed for cattle, popularized in the early 2010s by Oberon St. Clair, a really impressive marketer and PR person who took something that had been seen as garnish and made a superfood out of it. So from now I want to talk about kale and what it does for you. So kale's kind of renowned for its its vitamins. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I'm going to talk about that is a fact, but also what good does that do if your body can't absorb it?
No.
So I need to give credit to an article I found on patternsfitness.com titled "Kale as Bad for You as It Tastes." That had a lot of really good ideas in it, but I wanted to back up what the individual wrote. So I did some research. I was inspired by this, did some research on my own, just so I'm not beating it to death. A lot of the comments I'm going to make here are from healthline.com and also from WebMD. If anyone is much of a loser that they want me to verify this with them. Actually, I take that back. You should. Don't trust what some guy in a bandana tells you. Reach out to
that's
us.
The whole premise of our show.
Yeah. Well, but check your facts. Trust but verify.
That is true.
So everything, again, as someone who is a very biased participant in this discussion, I try to back up everything that I found here with something that didn't involve Jenny McCarthy or kalesfromthedevil.com. These are things that are from semi-objective websites. So essentially, I'm going to talk about just some of the problems with kale, particularly raw kale. So some stats on kale and why it's called a superfood. A lot of it comes from the amount of vitamins that it contains in its raw form. Vitamin A over 200% of your daily recommended value. Vitamin K, 684%.
Yeah,
Vitamin C,
that's the big one.
134%. Those are some of the big ones, and also some other good nutrients in that. But let's talk about what happens if your body can't absorb it. So starting with some of the problems with raw kale, we're going to go to an article from the San Francisco Gate discussing kale. Kale contains high amounts of fructans and galactans, which can be difficult to digest or even indigestible. While using enzyme supplements to help digest fructans may help, they are not yet commercially available. If you have irritable bowel syndrome and follow the FODMAP diet plan, kale is considered a code red food. You should only eat in limited quantities, if at all.
Interesting.
So just getting to the fact that, again, for years, kale was seen as kind of like a food of last resort, used to feed livestock and decoration, not something that's eminently eatable or digestible. Not to say that it's not a superfood or it's not, but, just, again, going with the idea if it's kind of been in front of our face for a long time.
Right.
So continuing from an article from healthline.com, can you eat raw kale and should you? Kale may be more nutritious, but may also harm your thyroid function. Kale, along with other cruciferous vegetables, contain a high amount of goitrogans, which are compounds that can interfere with thyroid function. Specifically, raw kale contains a type of goitrogen called goitrans. And frankly, I'm not sure if anything I'm saying are actually words, but they're written down somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds like something like you're reading The Hobbit or something. It's like the cruciferous boykins were, it sounds very fake, but yeah. But the takeaway is that it's hard to digest. Is that kind of what we're getting?
That's part of what we're getting at. And also thyroid dysfunction, which was listed in the TikTok video, which I feel stupid saying that out loud. But true. Again, getting to the point that maybe not the greatest thing to have. So before I lose everybody, I'm going to hit on a couple things about kale's vitamins. Most of them are fat soluble. What fat soluble means is you need to eat them with other fats for your body to absorb them. So if you're having kale raw, you're not having it soaked in butter or soaked in meat. A lot of those vitamins that are going into your body technically are not being absorbed. They're going away. And some of the minerals that are there too also aren't being absorbed. And we go to WebMD to talk about foods high in oxalates and how that leads to low mineral absorption. Because oxalates bind minerals like calcium, they prevent your body from absorbing beneficial nutrients in your digestive tract. Yet they don't block absorption completely. Our bodies would only use a portion of the nutrients we consume. So oxalates are one of the reasons that kale doesn't taste good, especially in its raw form. Oxalates are essentially defense mechanisms of plants against insects and grazing animals to keep them from being overrun. And that statement is actually from a study I found. Acid oxalates in plants from self-defense to phytoremediation, which, by the way, phytoremediation is going to be the next thing in the woke movement that you're going to hear about, just to let you know.
Yeah.
All right. So to summarize, raw kale has
good luck summarizing all those words because
raw kale has a lot of vitamins. However, they are fat soluble. So if you're eating it raw, one, your body's not going to be able to digest it anyway, as we've talked about. Two, for you to digest it, you're going to have to do something to it to modify it. And also with the oxalates in there, continuing to make it difficult to eat, but also not going to absorb a lot of things to it. So Scott, if you could share that document I provided to you that shows raw kale versus cooked kale.
Here you go.
So this information is from Wikipedia, but it does have links from, I believe, the USDA is where this came. Actually, if you could scroll to the bottom, USDA database. One of the links is dead, but you can find new versions of this. But again, trust but verify. So you'll notice here with kale that the stats, if you compare the two of them, kale on the right is what it is raw. But as you kind of scroll through looking at it, goes from vitamin A being, 241 of something down to 146.
Right.
Vitamin K actually goes up a little bit in this, but vitamin C goes down from 145% to 49%. So where it does have great vitamin attributes, it's lost a bit when it is cooked.
Okay, so you gotta cook it to make it soluble or whatever,
Mhm.
or no, you're supposed to cook it so the digestion's not so bad. But once you cook
Right.
it, you lose a lot of the
Yeah.
benefits that make it a superfood.
Right.
Is that right?
Exactly. And again,
Mhm.
not to say there's not benefits from it, but in comparison to things
Right.
that are already here. So, for conclusion of this, Scott, if you could
Mhm.
share the other form that I provided
Yes,
you.
I sure will.
So, I went to a website called myfooddata.com.
Mhm.
I use this mainly because it was an easy way to make a comparison between cooked spinach and cooked kale. And Scott, if you could just scroll down a bit to
Sure.
the vitamin portion of this.
All right, so here's vitamins.
Yeah.
I think one is spinach and two is kale,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
So just looking at the figures that we see there, we see
Mhm.
that in terms of vitamin A, spinach 105% of what you need, kale 21%.
Mm.
Let's go down to the legendary. Let's see if we can find the vitamin 12 or vitamin K. Well, there's
There it
there's
is.
vitamin A,
Mhm.
629% to 126%,
Mhm.
and vitamin K, 740% to 453%. So
Wow.
point being that kale, where it does have some vitamin qualities, once you
Mhm.
actually cook it and put it in a way that you might be able to get it in your body,
Right.
has nowhere near the power of spinach.
And I think I'm glad you brought this up because that's it. That's very responsible because it'd be easy for someone listening to be like, "Okay, dude, you hate kale. We get it." But it's not, maybe it's not bad for you. Maybe it is based on what you're saying, but what would I replace it with? And the answer, I guess, is easy, which is spinach, which is, I guess, better for you.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know if you researched, I'm assuming it doesn't have the same issues that kale has when it comes to
Mm.
digestion and things like
You've
that.
had you've had spinach, right? We've used it for years. We've known about its
Mhm.
properties for years. It's traditionally seen as
Yeah.
a healthy food to eat. And again,
Popeye used it. So you
exactly. I
got
mean, for me, that's
kale and
frankly,
cows.
we
Mhm.
want to talk about the influence of Chef Boyardee, the influence
Yeah.
of Popeye, even though it didn't really convert me to spinach. Um, I think now it's something I can tolerate a bit more, especially if I can spite people with kale. So to conclude, maybe the most important part of this, and probably the one that I can't really factually back up as
Mhm.
much as some of the other things, is kale from the devil. So quoting from
Oh, yeah.
Smithsonian Magazine, an article entitled "The Magic of Kale and 5 Ways to Eat It." Going to focus on the magic part of this. This is also from 2010, before Ms. St. Clair's exceptional marketing campaign came out.
Mhm.
Quoting a book, Halloween, an American Holiday, American History, cabbage and kale, unlikely magical tools that they may seem, were assumed by the Irish to possess great fortune-telling power. Foods were plentiful throughout the British Isles, and young people pulled up kale plants to judge the nature of their future spouses from the taste. A bitter stalk meant
Wow.
a bitter mate. And also, the ritual of pulling the kale was so popular it inspired poetry, including a poem called Halloween from 1785 by the great Scottish poet Robert Burns. So, longtime listeners will remember that this came up actually in one of our, was it our first Halloween episode that we
May
discussed?
have been our first. It
It
may
may
have
have
been
been
the
our
first
first or
one.
second, but we
Mhm.
brought up an obese fraud who will go unnamed, who used to ruin Halloween for young people, and if
Oh, no.
anything, probably needed kale, maybe to choke on it. Maybe it'd be good for him to crap his brains out. Reference this, which he was wrong about absolutely everything else he discussed, but perhaps unintentionally right about this.
That
So,
was one of my favorite moments in the whole podcast was when you had already been I think you were already saying kale is from the devil, right? Or that
I've
came
been saying
before
that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Well,
came
I know, but
before that.
like I don't remember you saying kale was from the devil before we started
Mhm.
this podcast. I knew you didn't like it, but you were saying kale is from the devil a lot and using it on our social media. And then we do a Halloween episode
Mhm.
and it comes up in the research. Kale comes up. It's
Yeah.
like how it's like, oh my gosh, couldn't be more perfect.
Yeah. So
So
is it a stretch to say that it's from the devil because was used for fortune telling by kids on Halloween? Yes.
mhm,
And am I going to go with that? Yes, I am. Kale is
yeah,
still from the devil. But more importantly, it's not necessarily a superfood, despite what's been marketed to you.
yeah.
Eat your spinach. You're not a sheep. You're not a poor peasant. in the British Isles during a famine. Eat your spinach. Kale is trendy. I still don't like it. Nothing, frankly, I was fine was going to make me like it, but I do feel better that I know the truth, that I've given the truth, and I can honestly and happily say at the end of every show, Kale is from the devil.
Oh man, you went all out for this one. Great job, Steve. I'm really impressed. So, all right, well, thank you for listening to and watching Origin of Speaksies. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/Speaksies and becoming a Speaksies supporter, which unlocks bonus content like Speaksies Uncut, personal records, Cringe Watch, and True Facts with Robert Banquet. Also, you can visit our TeePublic store by going to speaksies.com/store for shirts, stickers, and hoodies, and hopefully soon, Speaksies squirrel covers. Once again, thank you for listening. Bob's your uncle, and that's what I'm talking about.
Watch out for bears, and Kale is from the devil.
Speaksies.